Have you ever wondered why the truly disciplined man does not tremble when another man's shadow crosses the gaze of the woman he loves? Most men are torn apart by jealousy, that fever of the soul that mixes desire with fear, possession with insecurity. But the Stoic man does not bend beneath its weight. He watches it rise like a storm on the horizon, and instead of being swept into the thunder, he stands still, anchored, as if the storm itself must bend around him. For jealousy is not about the other man, nor even about the woman. It is about the fractures within one's own self, fractures that the Stoic has already confronted in the silence of his own mind. Jealousy is the scream of the shadow, that hidden part of the psyche Jung described, the place where all unmet desires, insecurities, and wounds lie buried. When a man becomes jealous, it is not truly because another man exists. It is because he believes, deep down, that he is not enough. He fears being replaced, abandoned, or unworthy. This is the child of trauma, the echo of abandonment lodged deep in the unconscious. And when he projects this onto the woman before him, he does not see her clearly anymore. She becomes a mirror, reflecting back his doubt, his anger, his suspicion, his possessiveness are not aimed at her, but at his own unclaimed shadow. In this way, jealousy is less about love and more about the self's refusal to confront its inner weakness. The Stoic man has taken the harder road. He has met the shadow in the silent hours, when no one is watching. He has stood before his own insecurities and refused to be ruled by them. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Jealousy thrives on imagination, on phantoms of betrayal, on fantasies of loss, on conjured images of what might be happening beyond one's sight. But when the disciplined man brings his mind back to reality, he sees that none of these shadows can touch him. He does not own her. She is free to stay or to leave. And in that freedom, the depth of his love is revealed. For love is not possession, but choice. A man who clings is weak. A man who lets go is unbreakable. Now consider yourself. When the pang of jealousy rises in your chest, it feels like fire, doesn't it? A tightening in the throat, a burning in the stomach, a desperate need to control. But what would happen if, instead of feeding that fire, you stepped back from it? If you refused to identify with it, refused to make it your master, imagine looking at your jealousy as though it were a wild animal thrashing inside a cage. You can feed it, or you can let it starve. The Stoic man lets it starve, for he knows it was never his essence. It was only an illusion of the ego, a trick to make him believe he could lose what was never his to own. Epictetus once said, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can overpower my will." Apply this to jealousy. Another man may seek her affection. Another man may win her admiration, but he cannot touch the fortress of your will. If your worth depends on her staying, then you are already enslaved. If your worth remains even when she leaves, then you are free. And freedom, not possession, is the mark of true power. The jealous man is chained to outcomes. The Stoic man is bound only to his own virtue. There is also a deeper truth. The jealous man reveals to the woman his weakness without words. She feels it in the way his hands grip too tightly, in the way his eyes scan the room with suspicion, in the way his voice carries the tremor of fear, disguised as anger. She senses that his love is not rooted in confidence, but in need, and need is the death of attraction. But the Stoic man, untouched by jealousy, radiates something different: certainty. He does not need to prove. He does not need to compete. He does not need to beg. His presence alone declares, "I am whole, with or without you." And paradoxically, it is that wholeness that draws her closer, for no woman desires to be the savior of a broken man. Think of it like this. Jealousy is a cage, but the door is never locked. Most men rattle the bars for a lifetime, never realizing they could walk out at any moment. The Stoic man walks out. He sees that his value is not determined by whether she chooses him today or tomorrow. His value is in the discipline he has forged, the silence he has mastered, the self he has built brick by brick in solitude. He is not shaken when another man enters the room, because his worth does not depend on comparison. The jealous man competes, the Stoic man transcends, and in that transcendence, he discovers a love that is not desperate, but sovereign. Jealousy, then, is a test. It asks you, do you belong to your fears, or do you belong to yourself? Every time you feel that fire rising, you are standing at a crossroads. One path leads to possession, anger, suspicion, the slow death of love. The other leads to freedom, strength, and unshakable calm. Which path do you walk? That is the difference between a man enslaved by his shadow and a man who has mastered it. Jealousy often disguises itself as love, but beneath its mask, it is nothing more than the hunger of the ego. The insecure man calls his jealousy proof that he cares. But care rooted in fear is not love, it is dependency. Real love allows another soul to breathe, to choose, to stand in freedom. Anything less is merely possession, wrapped in the costume of devotion. The Stoic man understands this distinction. He refuses to confuse emotional chains with intimacy, for he knows that what is bound by fear is already fragile, and what is free by choice is unbreakable. From a psychological view, jealousy arises when a man identifies his entire sense of worth with external validation. The woman becomes not just a partner, but the mirror through which he sees himself. If her attention shifts, even slightly, his entire identity trembles. He feels annihilated, not because he has truly lost her, but because he has lost the illusion that he was whole through her eyes. Jung would say the jealous man has projected his anima, his inner feminine, onto the woman outside him. She holds his unlived life, his unclaimed feelings, his need for affirmation. When she looks elsewhere, he feels as if his very soul is being stolen. But the truth is that what he seeks has always been within him, not in her gaze. This is why the Stoic man does not fall into jealousy. He has integrated his shadow, made peace with his anema, confronted his wounds. He does not demand that a woman carry the burden of healing what he has neglected in himself. He sees her not as a savior, not as a mirror, not as an anchor, but as a companion, free to walk beside him or free to walk away. His identity does not rise or fall with her choices, and because of this, he does not cling, he does not panic, he does not wither when faced with competition. The competition is irrelevant because his worth is not determined by the comparison. But think about the man who burns with jealousy. What is he really saying when he tightens his grip, when he demands proof, when he interrogates every glance? He is announcing to the world, I do not trust my own value. I fear I am replaceable. And the tragedy is that in his desperation to hold on, he drives her further away. Women sense the weakness in jealousy. It reeks of fear, of need, of a man who cannot stand alone. Yet the man who does not get jealous radiates something intoxicating, calm indifference to outcomes. He does not chase validation. He does not tremble at the thought of loss. He knows that he is more than enough, and that truth cannot be taken from him. For you, The test is clear. When you feel jealousy rising, you must ask yourself, what is this moment revealing about me? Is it her freedom that terrifies me? Or is it my own unhealed wound? If another man's presence shakes you, it is not because he has power over you. It is because you have given him power through your insecurity. Take it back. Stand in silence. Let her look where she will. If she chooses him, she was never yours to lose. If she chooses you, let it be because she desires you freely, not because you bound her in fear. Only then will love be real. Seneca once wrote that the greatest remedy for anger is delay. The same can be said of jealousy. Delay your reaction. Do not let the fire consume you before you have examined its source. Ask yourself, is this jealousy pointing me toward my shadow, toward an insecurity I have refused to face? If so, thank it, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. For every pang of jealousy is an invitation to grow stronger, freer, more sovereign. And each time you master it, you prove not only to her, but to yourself, that you are unshakable. The Stoic man, then, is not a man without emotion. He feels the same fire, the same pangs, the same shadows whispering in the night. But he does not bow to them. He disciplines them. He channels them. He transforms jealousy into self-awareness, fear into detachment, insecurity into power. And in doing so, he becomes the rarest kind of man, the man a woman cannot control, because he does not even seek to control her. Jealousy thrives in silence, but not the strong silence of discipline, rather the suffocating silence of unspoken fear. It grows in the man who avoids his own reflection, who refuses to admit that he is terrified of being abandoned. That is why jealousy is not a simple passing emotion. It is a revelation. It tells you exactly where you are still chained. The Stoic man welcomes this revelation. Instead of lashing out, he uses it as a mirror to expose the fractures within himself. He would rather face his own weakness than project it onto another. That act alone separates him from the masses, who are slaves to the illusions of their own hearts. Psychologically, jealousy is rooted in comparison, the toxic act of measuring one's worth against another. When you compare, you are already defeated, for the mind always finds someone stronger, richer, more charming, more desired. The jealous man becomes consumed by this endless competition, spiraling into paranoia and resentment. But the Stoic man sees through the lie. He knows that comparison is an insult to the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And what is jealousy, if not the ultimate waste of time? Every second spent obsessing over another man is a second stolen from your own growth, your own mastery, your own destiny. You must ask yourself, what does jealousy reveal about your relationship with yourself? If her attention wandering makes you feel like nothing, then you have built your identity on sand. The Stoic builds on stone. His self-worth is not erected on shifting sands of approval, but on the bedrock of his discipline, his virtue, his unshakable principles. He does not crumble when others leave, because he has already chosen not to abandon himself. This is why he does not get jealous. His center of gravity is internal, not external. Women feel this difference immediately. They may not name it, but they sense it. A man ruled by jealousy pulls on them, weighs them down, suffocates their freedom. A man free from jealousy lifts them, allows them to breathe, to glow, to feel the fullness of choice. Ironically, it is this very freedom that makes her desire him more. Because he does not chain her, she chooses him. Because he does not beg, she leans closer. Because he does not fear, he becomes the anchor she trusts. And this is the paradox the insecure man never understands. Jealousy kills love, but freedom sustains it. Think of the warrior on the battlefield. The coward looks sideways, checking who marches beside him, fearful of being outshone. The true warrior looks forward, his eyes fixed on his own path. He does not waste his energy scanning the ranks for rivals. He knows his worth is proven in his actions, not in comparisons. Jealousy is the sideways glance of the soul. Stoicism is the forward gaze. The man who looks forward conquers. The man who looks sideways falters. And yet jealousy is not to be hated, it is to be transformed. The Stoic does not pretend it doesn't exist. He studies it. He learns from it. He asks, why did this surge appear? What wound is it pointing to? Is it fear of abandonment? Fear of being unseen? Fear of being inadequate? By tracing jealousy back to its root, he can address the wound directly. This is shadow work, to drag into the light what the ego tries to hide. The man who refuses this work remains trapped, while the man who faces it becomes untouchable. Imagine this. You are at a gathering, and she laughs at another man's words. The jealous man stiffens, his mind inventing betrayals that do not exist. His chest burns, his voice sharpens, his presence collapses. But the Stoic man observes calmly. He sees her joy and does not flinch, for he knows her laughter does not diminish him. He understands that attraction cannot be forced, and that his dignity is never in another's hands. If she chooses another, then let her go. If she chooses him, then let it be free. Either way, he stands tall. That is the essence of Stoicism, not control over others, but mastery over the self. This mastery radiates like a silent fire. People feel it in his presence, the calm, the steadiness, the refusal to be shaken. He does not announce it. He does not boast. He does not need to prove. His lack of jealousy is not indifference. It is sovereignty. And sovereignty is the most attractive force of all. Jealousy is the confession of weakness, even when it is spoken through clenched teeth and a hardened jaw. The man who insists he is just protecting what's his reveals not strength, but fragility. True protection does not come from fear or control. It comes from inner steadiness. The Stoic man knows this. He does not need to surveil or to guard, because he has already mastered the only fortress that matters, himself. No one can breach the walls of a soul, disciplined in silence, tempered by reason, and bound by virtue. When jealousy overtakes the ordinary man, it rewrites his perception of reality. Every look becomes suspicious. Every delay in response becomes betrayal. Every smile cast elsewhere becomes a dagger. His mind becomes a theater of ghosts, phantoms of infidelity, shadows of rejection, illusions of loss. He suffers more from imagination than from fact, just as Seneca warned. He torments himself, not because of what is happening, but because of the fantasies he cannot silence. And in this torment, he forgets that his suffering is self-inflicted. But the Stoic man views the same scene with different eyes. He knows he does not own her, nor does he need to. Ownership is an illusion, for no soul can be possessed. A woman's heart cannot be kept through force, through jealousy, through endless suspicion. It can only be kept if it chooses to remain. And so, he releases her from his grasp, not because he does not care, but because his care is strong enough to endure her freedom. Love that cannot endure. Freedom is not love at all. It is insecurity masquerading as devotion. This is why the Stoic man is magnetic. His calm in the face of jealousy speaks to a deeper power. While others scramble for proof and cling to control, he stands unshaken. He trusts himself, and that trust radiates outward. She feels it, not the desperate pull of a man who fears loss, but the grounded presence of a man who knows he can never truly lose himself. And this shifts everything. For women, consciously or unconsciously, desire a man who does not collapse when tested. His strength gives her freedom, and her freedom draws her back to him. Modern psychology confirms what the ancients already knew. Jealousy is projection, the mind casting its hidden wounds onto the present moment. If you were abandoned as a child, jealousy whispers that you will be abandoned again. If you were once betrayed, jealousy insists that betrayal hides behind every smile. The jealous man relives his past endlessly, dragging old wounds into new relationships. But the Stoic man refuses to let yesterday dictate today. He has confronted his trauma, named it, stripped it of its power. By facing the fear of loss, he robs jealousy of its teeth. The wound no longer controls him because he has claimed it as his own and made peace with it. Imagine yourself in this position. The woman you love receives attention from another man. Do you tighten your grip, suffocate her with suspicion, and expose your insecurity? Or do you remain still, allowing her the dignity of choice? The first path leads to decay, resentment, and eventual loss. The second path, though harder, leads to freedom, respect, and the possibility of true love. The Stoic man chooses the second path because he values dignity above possession and truth above illusion. Epictetus once taught that it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The presence of another man does not harm you. It is your judgment, your belief that his presence diminishes you, that causes the pain. Change the judgment, and the pain dissolves. The Stoic man reframes the moment. He sees it not as a threat, but as a test of his own sovereignty. Will he be ruled by fear, or will he rule himself? Every encounter becomes an opportunity to practice mastery, to sharpen his strength, to prove, most of all to himself, that nothing external can shake what is internal. And here lies the paradox. The man who fears most to lose her often drives her away, while the man who remains calm in her freedom often wins her deepest loyalty. For no woman desires to be shackled by fear. She desires to choose again and again the man whose presence makes her feel safe, not because he polices her every move, but because his strength gives her space to breathe. That is why the Stoic man does not get jealous, not because he is cold, not because he does not care, but because he has already chosen freedom over fear, sovereignty over slavery. Jealousy feeds on illusion, but mastery is born in clarity. The man ruled by jealousy imagines that by watching closely, by tightening his grip, he can secure loyalty. Yet loyalty cannot be forced. It must be freely given, or it is worthless. What he achieves instead is a slow poisoning of intimacy. Suspicion corrodes trust, neediness suffocates desire, and what began as passion ends in decay. The Stoic man knows this truth. No woman can be compelled into love without that love becoming a hollow shell. He therefore refuses to fight shadows. He will not compete for what is not his to own. He does not beg, and he does not cling. His strength is his refusal to compromise his dignity. To understand why the Stoic man does not get jealous, one must see how he relates to loss. For the ordinary man, loss feels like annihilation. His ego is so intertwined with the presence of the woman that her absence feels like death. But the Stoic has rehearsed loss in his mind many times. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Everything you love is mortal. Everything you hold can be taken." This practice is not pessimism, it is liberation. By contemplating loss, the Stoic loosens his grip on attachment. When the moment of testing comes, he does not break, for he has already accepted the impermanence of all things. A woman may stay, or she may leave. Either way, his soul remains whole. From a psychological lens, this acceptance is the end of projection. Jung teaches that what we refuse to integrate within ourselves is cast onto others. The jealous man has not faced his fear of inadequacy, so he casts it onto the woman and her imagined disloyalty. The Stoic has already faced this fear in solitude. He has sat with his own insufficiency until it no longer terrifies him. He does not require her gaze to validate him, for he has validated himself. And so, he does not need to project. He sees her clearly, without the distortion of his own wounds. This clarity is love at its purest, not a grasping at shadows, but a seeing of reality as it is. Now consider the paradox. Women feel safer with the man who is least possessive, not because he neglects them, but because his presence radiates stability. She senses that his love is not chained to fear. His lack of jealousy is not coldness, it is a sanctuary. In him, she feels the freedom to be fully herself, unguarded, untested by constant suspicion. This freedom deepens her attraction, because it is in freedom that true intimacy grows. The jealous man kills intimacy by choking it. The Stoic man allows it to breathe. Picture a flame. If you cup it too tightly, it suffocates and dies. If you let the wind devour it, it flickers out. But if you guard it with steady hands, not clinging, not fearful, it burns steadily through the night. That is love without jealousy. It is not lax, nor is it grasping. It is a quiet strength, a trust that what is meant to stay will stay. And if it does not, the man remains whole, for his flame is not borrowed, it is his own. You too are confronted with this choice. Will you be the man who chains himself to suspicion, or the man who radiates sovereign calm? Every test in love is a mirror, showing you who you truly are beneath the surface. If jealousy still rules you, it is not the woman who exposes your weakness. It is life itself. The Stoic man thanks life for the test, because it gives him one more chance to sharpen his will. And in sharpening his will, he transcends the shadows that enslave other men. Jealousy exposes the man who has not yet mastered himself. It clings to him like a parasite, feeding on his doubts, whispering to him that he is not enough, that he must prove himself, that he must control what is beyond control. But mastery begins when a man stops fighting shadows outside and begins facing the shadows within. The Stoic knows that the true battlefield is not between him and another suitor, not between him and the woman, but within the chambers of his own psyche. If he wins that battle, no external threat can shake him. Think of the archetype of the king, not the tyrant who rules through fear, but the sovereign who governs with quiet authority. The tyrant is jealous, suspicious, desperate to hold power. Every rival is a threat, every whisper an enemy. He exhausts himself guarding what he fears to lose. The sovereign king, however, does not panic at challengers. His authority is not derived from their submission, but from his own inner stability. This is the Stoic man. He is king of himself first, and because of that, he cannot be dethroned by anyone else. From the lens of modern psychology, jealousy is an ego wound. The jealous man experiences his partner's independence as rejection, her laughter with another as humiliation, her freedom as betrayal. But these are distortions of perception, not truths. What he calls love is often the projection of his own fragility. In truth, he does not fear losing her. He fears losing the version of himself he has built through her eyes. The Stoic man refuses to anchor his identity in such shifting sands. He grounds it instead in discipline, virtue, and the self-respect that no one can take from him. Women sense this distinction on an instinctive level. They feel the difference between the man who watches them with suspicion and the man who looks at them with calm confidence. The jealous gaze makes them recoil, for it is heavy with fear. The Stoic gaze invites them to stand freely, because it carries no hidden demand, no desperate pull. She knows, even without words, that this man is not shackled to her choices. He chooses her, but he does not need her. And paradoxically, it is this absence of need that makes her return again and again. Ask yourself honestly, when you fear losing her, is it truly her you fear losing, or is it your own reflection in her approval? If the latter, then jealousy has nothing to do with her and everything to do with you. It is a mirror exposing your lack of self-recognition. Do not curse the mirror, face it. Rebuild your sense of worth so deeply that no gaze, no choice, no departure can dismantle it. When you achieve this, jealousy withers like a weed deprived of water. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to treat each day as a borrowed gift, to hold everything lightly. Imagine applying that wisdom to love, to cherish her presence without demanding permanence, to accept her freedom without trembling at its implications, to stand sovereign whether she stays or goes. This is the height of power, not the power to control another, but the power to remain whole in the face of uncertainty. Such a man walks differently through life. His calm unnerves rivals, for they cannot provoke him into competition. His freedom attracts her, for she senses she is desired, but not caged. His dignity becomes his greatest weapon, because it cannot be stripped from him. He does not announce his lack of jealousy, he embodies it, and embodiment always speaks louder than words. Jealousy is the shadow that grows only in men who have never faced themselves fully. It is the cry of an unhealed wound, the trembling of a heart that secretly doubts its own worth. The Stoic man sees through this illusion. He understands that jealousy is never truly about the woman. It is always about the man's relationship with himself. And because he has built that relationship on discipline and inner clarity, jealousy has no ground to stand on. Look deeper. The jealous man is haunted by absence. Even when she is beside him, he fears her drifting away. He reads betrayal in every pause, every glance, every delay. He becomes addicted to reassurance, begging for scraps of validation to feed the hunger of his insecurity. But reassurance never lasts, and so he remains trapped in an endless cycle of fear. The Stoic man breaks the cycle at its root. He does not seek to silence fear by demanding proof. He silences fear by confronting it. He reminds himself, she may stay or she may leave, but I remain. And in that reminder, his power returns. From Jung's perspective, jealousy is a projection of the unintegrated anima. The jealous man clings to her because he has not yet embraced the feminine within himself, the capacity for emotional balance, receptivity, and inner harmony. Because he has rejected these qualities, he demands them from her. But the Stoic man has welcomed this inner union. He does not require her to complete him, for he has already completed himself. This integration makes him magnetic, for he is not half a man seeking his missing half, but a whole man walking in strength. Think of the image of a mountain. Storms may rage around it, clouds may gather, but the mountain does not tremble. Jealousy is the storm. The Stoic man is the mountain. He does not deny the storm's existence. He simply refuses to be moved by it. His calm becomes a presence that others feel without him ever speaking a word. Rivals sense they cannot provoke him. Women sense they cannot control him. This is why his absence of jealousy is not emptiness, it is sovereignty. And yet, this sovereignty is not cruel indifference. It is not the cold mask of a man, too detached to feel. Rather, it is the highest form of love. Love that does not suffocate. Love that allows freedom. Love that says, "You may choose me or not, but I will not betray myself in the process." This kind of love is rare, and because it is rare, it is irresistible. Women lean into it because they sense it is safe, not in weakness but in strength. They see that his trust is not blind, it is chosen, forged from the fire of his self-mastery. So ask yourself, what kind of man are you becoming? Do you live chained to suspicion, grasping desperately at what you fear to lose? Or do you stand like the mountain, calm, sovereign, untouchable? Every moment of jealousy is a crossroad. To feed it is to shrink. To face it is to grow. The Stoic man chooses growth every time, and in doing so, he becomes what others cannot. A man beyond comparison. A man who cannot be dethroned by fear. Jealousy is not only an emotion, it is a lens that distorts reality. It makes a man see betrayal where there is none, rejection where there is only neutrality, humiliation where there is nothing more than human freedom. The more he stares through this lens, the more his vision twists, until he no longer sees the woman before him, but only his own insecurities reflected back. This is why jealousy always consumes the man who feeds it. It starves him of truth and leaves him bloated with illusions. The Stoic man rejects the lens altogether. He looks at the woman not as property, not as an extension of his ego, but as a free soul walking beside him. If she drifts, it does not dismantle him. For she was never the pillar holding him up. His pillar is within, his discipline, his virtue, his mastery over his own impulses. Because of this, her choices cannot enslave him, and this is the essence of his freedom. He loves without chains, he gives without fear, he walks without trembling at the possibility of loss. From Jung's perspective, jealousy is the eruption of the shadow into consciousness. The jealous man does not recognize this shadow as his own. He mistakes it for an external threat. But the Stoic turns inward. He acknowledges the shadow, integrates it, and thereby robs it of its power. What once controlled him now becomes fuel for wisdom. What once enslaved him now becomes the mark of his sovereignty. This inner integration is why he can watch calmly as others compete for her gaze, unmoved by their presence. His shadow has already been faced, theirs has not. And this difference is visible. The jealous man twitches with suspicion, asks unnecessary questions, grows restless in her freedom. She feels the pressure, the weight, the silent demand. The Stoic man, by contrast, carries no tension. He does not demand, he does not accuse, he does not beg. His composure itself becomes magnetic. She feels lighter around him because he is not grasping at her. In his calm, she feels chosen, not trapped, and being chosen freely is what every woman desires most deeply. Imagine standing in his place. A rival approaches, bold and charming. The jealous man stiffens, panic hidden behind forced bravado. But the Stoic man remains still, not because he is indifferent, but because he knows his worth is not diminished by another man's presence. He does not compete on shallow ground. His strength is not loud, but undeniable. and often, the rival eventually falters. Because nothing unsettles a man more than facing someone who cannot be provoked into insecurity. This is why the Stoic man becomes unforgettable. He is not remembered for grand gestures of control or desperate confessions of need. He is remembered for the calm that surrounded him, the quiet power that made jealousy unnecessary. And in a world where most men are enslaved by suspicion, the man who is free becomes the rarest and most desired figure of all. Jealousy is hunger, disguised as passion. It is the hunger of the ego, begging for validation it cannot give itself. The insecure man thinks jealousy proves his love. But in truth, it only proves his dependence. Love that thrives on fear is not love at all. It is desperation wearing a mask. The Stoic man knows this, and because he refuses to live in desperation, jealousy finds no foothold in him. He does not ask, "Why is she looking at another?" He asks, "Why does it disturb me?" That question shifts the focus from her to himself, from illusion to truth. By doing so, he uncovers the core wound jealousy always conceals: the fear of being unworthy. Most men run from this wound, chasing distraction, grasping at control, blaming others. The Stoic man stares at it directly. He lets the fear speak, and in hearing it, its power dissolves. For nothing enslaves a man more than the enemy he refuses to name. From a Jungian perspective, jealousy is the unclaimed shadow rising to the surface. The man who has not integrated his own darkness becomes paranoid when he senses it in others. He projects his fear of betrayal, his fear of rejection, his fear of inadequacy outward, imagining it lives in her. The Stoic, however, embraces the shadow. He does not pretend he has no fears. He disciplines them. He does not hide from his wounds. He weaves them into strength. This is why he cannot be undone by jealousy, because he has already befriended the very forces that jealousy feeds on. Women instinctively know the difference. With the jealous man, they feel watched, measured, weighed down by his need for constant assurance. His insecurity becomes her burden, and eventually she seeks escape. But with the Stoic man, they feel light, free, unburdened. His calm is not neglect, but presence. He does not grip her, yet she feels secure. This paradox is irresistible. The man who does not need to hold her tightly is the man she most longs to remain close to. Imagine the stillness of a deep lake at dawn. Its surface does not ripple at every passing breeze. Its calmness is not weakness, it is depth. The Stoic man is that lake. A rival may stir the surface, but the depths remain unshaken. She sees this depth and trusts it. For in a world of shallow men constantly competing, grasping, proving, the man who embodies depth stands alone. And you? What would your relationships look like if you shed jealousy entirely? If instead of gripping tighter, you let go? If instead of fearing loss, you accepted it as part of life? If instead of begging for proof, you became proof? Proof of strength, of presence, of dignity? The transformation is not small. It is the difference between being a man who drains love and a man who sustains it. The Stoic man does not get jealous because he has chosen a higher allegiance. His loyalty is not to possession, but to principle, not to fear, but to freedom, not to illusion, but to truth. In mastering himself, he discovers the rarest power of all: to love without chains, to stand without trembling, to live without fear of loss. Jealousy is the prison where men lock themselves with keys they forged out of fear. It whispers, "Without her, you are nothing." And so they clutch, they tighten, they suffocate. But the Stoic man has already broken the lock. He has burned the false belief that his worth depends on anyone's gaze. He knows that a man cannot lose what was never his to own, another person's freedom. What he can lose, however, is himself, if he allows fear to dictate his actions, and that is the one loss he will never permit. The jealous man tries to control outcomes, but control is an illusion. No vigilance, no suspicion, no demand can force love to remain. The Stoic accepts this painful truth, and paradoxically, it gives him power. By surrendering the need to control, he becomes unshakable. He does not waste his energy policing her freedom, because he understands freedom is the only soil in which love can truly grow. To demand chains is to kill the very thing he hopes to preserve. Psychologically, jealousy reveals arrested development. It is the voice of the child who once feared being abandoned, still echoing in the grown man's heart. He panics at the thought of losing her because he has not yet healed the part of himself that believes love must be clung to. The Stoic man has tended to that child. He has soothed the old wound, faced the fear, and refused to let it rule him anymore. He has individuated, as Jung would say, become whole in himself. And wholeness is the antidote to jealousy. Consider the energy of jealousy. It is frantic, unstable, consuming. It narrows a man's focus until he cannot see beyond his fear. In this tunnel vision, he drives her away with his suspicion. Contrast this with the energy of the Stoic. His presence is calm, spacious, grounding. He gives her room to breathe, to shine, to choose. This calm presence pulls her closer, not by force, but by gravity. She returns not because she must, but because she cannot resist the freedom she feels in him. Imagine standing before a mirror. The jealous man sees only distortion, his reflection warped by fear. The Stoic man sees with clarity. He does not ask the mirror to flatter him. He accepts the truth of who he is, and in that acceptance, he finds strength. The jealous man demands reassurance from the woman. The Stoic man demands accountability from himself. That difference changes everything. For what woman can resist the man who does not panic in her freedom, who does not beg in her absence, who does not crumble when tested? This is not apathy. It is the deepest form of love. A love that does not destroy itself in fear. A love that allows choice. A love that radiates confidence even in the face of uncertainty. And in that confidence, jealousy dissolves like mist in the morning sun. The Stoic man does not get jealous because he has mastered the one truth most men fear to face. You cannot lose what was never yours, and you cannot be abandoned if you have never abandoned yourself. In his sovereignty, he becomes untouchable. In his calm, he becomes unforgettable. And in his freedom, he becomes truly worthy of love.